Okay, we are back in the middle of the drama, middle of the climax of the story. Carmen and Tony were right near the tank when it exploded. They tried to outrun it. They didn't. They were climbing on a wagon. But then Carmen slipped off and went under. But we know she survives, so let's find out how. Carmen desperately kicked her legs and spun her arms. She stretched out her neck to try to get her head above the goo. But the molasses was like quicksand. The more she flailed, the deeper she sank. Beneath the surface, claws of metal raked into her legs, splitting open her flesh. She felt her blood spill out, gushing into the swirling river that was carrying her away. It was no use struggling, she realized. The molasses was too strong, too powerful. How did she think she could fight back? The force of the flood pushed her forward. She somersaulted in the muck. She gagged and coughed, struggling to breathe through her molasses-clogged nose and mouth. No, she couldn't fight this. It was impossible. Soon there was only darkness and pain. And then a voice in her mind, just a whisper at first. Hold on. It got louder. Hold on! Papa? Was he here with her? No, it was just his voice calling to her. He was telling her what she needed to do. But this time Carmen was all alone in the raging flood. It would be up to her to keep herself afloat. And she would not give up, not without a fight. She somehow managed to straighten her body. She let herself sink down until her feet touched the solid ground. Then she pushed off, propelling herself up through the goo. Her head broke through the surface. She managed to take a few quick breaths before she sank down again. Hold on! Down and up she went over and over again. The fourth time she came up, she managed to open her burning eyes for just a few seconds. Long enough to see an empty wooden crate floating by her, long enough to reach for it, to get her arms around it. She held on, like she had before, like Papa had taught her. Blood spilled from her leg, her heart slowed, the world became blurred, sounds faded. But she didn't let go. Not until the men found her washed up next to a smashed house and pried her arms away. They wiped the molasses from her nose and lifted her up. Sirens wailed. Voices called to her, but Carmen felt very far from the north end. In Carmen's mind, she was with Papa, and she didn't want to leave him. Now that's the end of chapter 11, but that was short, so we'll go to chapter 12. Here's probably a real picture of the newspaper from back in the day. 3 days later, January 18th, 1919, around 7 a.m., Boston City Hospital. Hello? Are you awake? Carmen's eyes opened. A woman was holding her hand. Was it Mrs. Grasso? No, this woman was very young with red hair and freckles. She was wearing a white cap. A nurse, Carmen realized. Hello, darling, the nurse said, her Irish accent tickling Carmen's ear. I knew you were waking up. Carmen looked around. A pink curtain surrounded her bed. She was in a hospital. She tried to sit up, but her leg throbbed in pain. Carmen sucked in her breath. Don't fuss too much, love, the young nurse said. You have quite a wound in your leg. Lost yourself quite a lot of blood. Doctor stitched you up, though. You'll be running around soon enough. How long have I been here? Carmen asked. Her voice was scratchy. The nurse fluffed Carmen's pillow and straightened her blanket. 3 days. 3 days? How was that possible? Carmen lay back as the nurse took her pulse. You're in good shape, the nurse said, compared to some of the others. Who would have ever thought that a molasses tank could explode like that? The whole waterfront is gone, you know. They're going to be cleaning up for months. Carmen's mind was clearing. It was all slowly coming back to her. The tank shattered, the raging river of molasses, the bodies floating by. Carmen sat up and gasped. Tony, she blurted out. What had happened to Tony? Who? The nurse said. My best friend. Just then someone called from the other side of the room. Nurse, we need you here. Don't you worry, love, the nurse said to Carmen. You rest now. I'll be back. And she disappeared through the curtains, leaving Carmen all alone. But she wasn't alone for long. Carmen heard them before she saw them. I want to see her first. No, me. You pushed me. Did not. A stampede of little footsteps clattered across the tile floor. The curtain flew open, and the 3 littlest Grasso kids swarmed around her bed. They all stared at her, 6 enormous brown eyes. Frankie broke out into a huge grin. He raised his hands into the air. "She's alive!" he bellowed. Carmen laughed. Mrs. Grosso came rushing after them, out of breath. She took one look at Carmen and started crying, but her face lit up with a smile even as the tears poured down. Carmen held her breath, afraid to hope, and then, seconds later, another face appeared, battered, scraped, smiling. Tony. So what do you think will happen? Do you think they're still going to send her back to Italy? We shall see.